Widzę Legendary Dropsy. Ma materiał o mixtape'ie, oglądamy. Tylko, że to jest chyba ostatni materiał, który ja mogę o mixtape'ie nagrać. Bo mam gameplay, mam swoje przemyślenia odnośnie mixtape'a i teraz Legendary Dropsy. Ale fajnie się nazywa. Nigdy nie byłem tak skrinżowany byciem millennialsem.
I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed to be a millennial. And honestly, that's saying something. You know what? As a self-elected representative of my own generation, I would like to issue a public apology to the rest of society. I am so sorry. Is anybody looking to draft me?
Felieton się nie liczy.
Mixtape is about as authentic as looking at family photos in a photo album at Kmart or Hobby Lobby. It is a $20, 3-hour runtime, barely interactive movie that's masquerading as a video game that is somehow, some way, rating as high as Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Znaczy, ja wam powiem tak. Stawiamy Stillmana, nie Strumana, nigdy. Na obronę recenzentów, którzy wystawili temu wysoką notę, mogę tylko powiedzieć, że porównywanie not pomiędzy gatunkami nie ma sensu, jeżeli dana redakcja miałaby sensowny system wystawiania not i kategoryzowałaby, w jakim gatunku i w jakim pułapie wystawia tą ocenę. Bo my nie możemy porównać dwóch gier, albo trzech gier. Jedna będzie miała 7, druga będzie miała 8, trzecia będzie miała 9 ocenę. Jedna będzie strzelanką, druga będzie CRPG-iem, a trzecia będzie interaktywnym filmem, tak jak Mixtape. I my nie możemy stwierdzić, że skoro Mixtape ma najwyższą ocenę, to jest najlepszą grą, bo jest z zupełnie innego gatunku. I zawsze trzeba myśleć o analizie porównawczej i o wytycznych w danym jednym gatunku. No bo kurwa, no nie jesteś w stanie ocenić odpowiednio albo zrecenzować strzelanki, nie grając w inne strzelanki. Musisz się odwołać do pewnych filarów. To jest bardzo ważne, nie? Ale niestety ci recenzenci nie potrafili obronić tych swoich tez, które rzucali w materiałach, bo zauważcie, ja was na to uczulam, bo sam jestem coraz bardziej na to uczulony. Recenzenci piszą tak: Mixtape jest świetny, Mixtape jest genialny, Mixtape ma dobry soundtrack, Mixtape to przymiotnik. I teraz zamieńcie to. Mixtape to gówno, Mixtape jest chujowy, Mixtape jest do dupy, Mixtape to, Mixtape tamto. Jaką to ma wartość? To jest bezwartościowy tekst, no nie? Więc można byłoby ich próbować jakoś obronić, jeżeli ich systemy not byłyby bardziej sensowne, nie?
We were a mistake. We are nostalgia addicted. That's the only explanation that I have for this. It's so embarrassing to see. You have journalists that are out there that are believing that this game needs to be held in the annals of history, a cornerstone of the game's industry, but you have players that are just like, no. We don't want
generalnie to, co jest największym problemem Mixtape'a, bo to jest, ja to powiedziałem w materiale, niech takie gry sobie powstają, niech takie gry tracą pieniądze, bo Mixtape na pewno będzie w topu finansowym, no nie oszukujmy się. Nie możesz kupić 20 takich kawałków, wydać przez Annapurnę gierki, mieć 2000 osób w piku, sprzedaż 80 000 egzemplarzy i wyjść na plus. No po prostu to jest niemożliwe, no nie? Tylko, jeżeli nagle, stary, to się zacznie pojawiać w plebiscytach gamingowych, na Game Awardsach i to zajmie w którymkolwiek miejscu spota albo slota, którego mogłaby dostać inna gra, która faktycznie jest grą, to ja będę osobiście wkupiony i nie ma się co dziwić innym graczom, że też będą wkupieni, że na ich plebiscycie nagle zaczynają pojawiać się rzeczy, które są kwestionowane w byciu danym typem produktu, są kwestionowalne w swojej kategorii i zaczynają rozpychać się łokciami i zabierać miejsce czemuś bardziej wartościowemu, no nie?
have anything to do with it. This is like years of distrust that are just collapsing into one single moment where everybody's turning and looking at the media and saying, you don't belong here and you don't represent us. And they are so right. There are so many in the games industry today that are so detached from what players even consider is a video game anymore. I mean, these guys are handing out 10s to what is effectively a light novel with an 80s soundtrack. Like, how does that happen? They're treating their personal taste like it's some higher artistic authority that goes above what the players want or what the players need, these people that are playing and buying these games. And as such, the players are pushing back, as they should. So, is Mixtape a 10 out of 10? Well, I played it. What do you think? Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most controversial, not a video games ever made, the public's reaction to it, what game developers are hopefully...
Ja chyba nie jestem grifterem. Zbyt spokojnie nagrywam te moje ostatnie materiały.
...going to learn from this situation and how, for whatever reason, people just do not understand why the players are pushing back. met with near universal praise from critics. IGN, DualShockers, Insider Gaming, and VGC all gave it a 10 out of 10, with more and more of them flooding in as the days went on. The game is now sitting at an 85 on Metacritic, and IGN's has now become the most controversial review because, well, the last games that they gave a 10 to were Elden Ring, Stardew Valley, Baldur's Gate 3, and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. All of these are massive, beloved, transformative games that people still talk about every single day. So naturally, this game, Mixtape, it must be an insane god amongst games, right? Right? No, definitely not. Mixtape launched to an eye-watering 15,000 players. Sorry, that's 1,500 players before reaching their peak of just over 2,000 players. It was
Nie no, to, że Mixtape dostał taką ocenę w IGN-ie, ma tylko dwa możliwe powody. Jeden, zostali przykupieni. Serio, po prostu tam poszły pieniądze podstęp. Dwa, są kurwa tak głupi. To jest prawdopodobne w tym wypadku. Obie opcje są prawdopodobne.
developed by Beethoven and Dinosaur and published by Annapurna Interactive, a subsidiary of Annapurna Pictures, a company that's owned by Megan Ellison, whose father, Larry Ellison, is the fifth richest person in the world that also happened to bail that studio out of bankruptcy back in 2019. Isn't it great when indie games have a golden parachute? Isn't that so common in this games industry? These guys are definitely not going to be beating the allegations of being an industry plant. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I played Mixtape, or at least I pressed forward through a collection of memories an entire generation seems to have wished that they had, because, well, the reception to this game is just, it is so fake to me. The reviewers that are out there that are seal clapping over nostalgia, this is over things that these guys have never even experienced. Now, I'm not saying that
On mówi dokładnie, ja pierdolę to samo co ja. No przecież to jest kolejny materiał, no, nagrany przez gamingowego frustrata pod Kiszaka, żeby, wiesz, mógł poklepać swego pieska po plecach, no nie? Ja pierdolę, wam nic już nie pasuje.
none of this has ever happened to anybody. Obviously, pieces of this have. People have had messy friendships and mixtapes, and people definitely had some weird nights where everything felt a lot bigger than it actually was. But Mixtape does not feel like lived nostalgia. It feels like manufactured nostalgia. It feels like people that are pining for a past that they didn't actually live, but they definitely wish that they had, and a version of youth that honestly I think only exists in old movies, old songs, and whatever Pinterest board these guys built this game around. That's why this entire thing doesn't even come off as true to life. It feels like somebody just watched a stack of 90s movies and just decided that's how people lived. I mean, these guys don't even do a good job at portraying the era that they're supposed to be showing here. Like, this is supposed to be the late 90s or 1990s.
Ja mam bardzo mocne też takie przemyślenie odnośnie tego, że tu jest zbyt duże natężenie na lata 70. i 80., a to jest końcówka lat 90. Im tutaj brakuje takich, wiecie, jeżeli oni chcieli pokazać buntowników z końca lat 90., to nie powinni ich pokazać, wiecie, jako takie alternatywki, no nie? Przecież tego było wtedy w chuj na ulicy, no nie? Szerokie spodnie, to jest to, co jest kojarzone z nu metalem. Łańcuchy, szerokie spodnie, koszulki z kornem. Wiecie, o co chodzi, no nie? Ale nie, to by wtedy nie pasowało, bo to jest, wiesz, to są stare lata 80., to trzeba by było wejść trochę bezpieczniej, no nie? W Joy Division. Oni powinni być tacy bardziej punkowi, no jak najbardziej stary. Jeżeli mieli z nich zrobić faktycznie takich buntowników, to tak trzeba było. Ale nie, bo to wiesz, to ma być takie właśnie, jak to recenzenci nazwali, oniryczne doświadczenie i to ma być takie bezpieczne, to ma być takie luźniejsze. Oni tu nie mogli kupić, wiesz, korna albo metaliki. Nie, to by stary nie pasowało pod klimat nostalgii dla takiej babeczki z Heru. Dlatego tu weszło Joy Division, dlatego tu weszło Smashing Pumpkins. O wiele delikatniejsze, bardziej emocjonalne zespoły. Nie mówię, że złe, ale to nie są zespoły, które są raczej utożsamiane z buntem, nie?
99, and Slater, who's supposed to be a metalhead, is for some odd reason wearing his mom's pants instead of wearing baggy jeans or Jinkos. And I really...
Kurwa, dokładnie, stary. Dokładnie. Jeżeli, no nie no, kurwa, jak dla mnie, to powinno, poczekajcie, jak się to nazywa? Po czym ja myślę, jest bardziej związane z początkiem lat 2000, ja wam to pokażę, może to znajdę. Jeżeli to miała być końcówka lat 90., powiedzcie mi, czy wy czujecie, kurwa, do tego nostalgię teraz? Tylko to są bardziej lata faktycznie wczesne 2000, ale no jak tutaj mówimy o 99, to bardzo, ale to bardzo blisko, nie? Stary, to jest to, no nie? To jest kurwa to.
realize. That might sound a little bit petty, but that kind of stuff matters when the entire point
No, ale no mimo wszystko, no my gadamy o, wiesz, o typach, którzy są fanami metalu pod koniec lat 90. No zobacz, jak ten koleś, kurwa, jest ubrany. Stary, no proszę cię. Naprawdę jest taka, no niestety na lata 90. różniły się od tych, które my mamy teraz. W latach 90. tak wyszedł, kurwa, na osiedle, to by ci pewnie ryja robili. No niestety, no. No niestety, no tak wyglądały czasy tamte, nie? Przecież to jest hipsterski vibik, stary. Właśnie, nie wiem, z lat 2010 plus, no nie? Z jakiejś burgerowni. To jest postać, która jest fanem, kurwa, metalu pod koniec lat 90. tu przedstawiona. Dlatego to jest tak korporacyjne, dlatego to widać, że to nie jest edgy. Dlatego widać, że to jest, no niestety, sztucznie przygotowane. Yeah.
Selling this game is based on its authenticity, and also when the people that are reviewing it are crying about nostalgia, but that nostalgia is misplaced because it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, if you look at the styling of half of these characters, it looks like most of these guys are pulled out of Dazed and Confused. I mean, the guy in the white
Kurwa, stary, mówiłem o Dazed and Confused, który bardzo dobrze w ogóle też przekazuje cały główny motyw związany z derastaniem, no nie? Tylko, że w jakich czasach jest Dazed and Confused? Są lata, kurwa, 70. czy 80. Tam gra w ogóle ten McConaughey, no nie? O, stary, patrz. No, Dazed and Confused. Dokładnie oni, kurwa, wyglądają jak wydarci z tego. 76. jest Dazed and Confused umiejscowiony, nie? No.
shirt and the sunglasses is literally just Wooderson from Dazed and Confused. People had even pointed out that the cassette tapes in this game don't even have the little exposed section where the magnetic tape is supposed to be shown. And this is a game that's called Mixtape. How do you not even get that right? People are trying to treat this game like it's some kind of high art.
Kurwa, ale wiecie co? Nie musicie mi wierzyć, nie? Ja jestem zwykłym Polakiem, który wychował się na osiedlu, na totalnym zadupiu w Polsce B, no nie? Ja nie mogę mieć teoretycznie tej nostalgii ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi. To jest coś, co ja widziałem na MTV, to jest coś, co ja widziałem w telewizji, to jest coś, co ja widziałem w teledyskach, no nie? To jest coś, co ja mogłem czuć w muzyce, ale to faktycznie teraz wychodzi od typa, który się wychował w tamtych czasach, w tamtych okolicy, nie?
And honestly, I feel like that could actually work. That could be a defense for some of these writers and journalists, and maybe even the developers of this game. But this whole experience is so painfully mediocre and poorly written that doesn't even work. Guys, how does this even happen? These characters don't even have any real personality or defining traits, and that's the entire point of playing a narrative game like this. Slater is a dial tone with a few random existential stoner lines. Stacy is the main character, and I couldn't tell you a thing about her other than the fact that she likes music and thinks that stalking somebody in New York is going to be her call to fame. Cassandra is arguably the most memorable character outside
Nie, widzowie, wy odróbcie pracę domową, obejrzyjcie sobie Dazed and Confused, to jest zajebiste. Jest w ogóle jedna scena, która się potem kurwa memem stała, no nie? Jak w ten McConaughey w aucie, nie? Podjeżdża. Tak zajebisty film.
Father, because, well, at least she actually has something resembling a real conflict. She's lived her whole life seeking her parents' approval, and now she's finally wondering whether or not she's living her own life or somebody else's. But I actually think the best character in Mixtape is probably Cassandra's father in this case. Like, how was this guy actually portrayed as a villain? Oh man, what a terrible father, not wanting his daughter, who's getting ready to go to college, to go and hang out with a couple of mindless losers that all they want to do is just get drunk and high all the time. As somebody who identifies with those losers at that age, every single father that told their daughter not to hang out with me was 100% right. I was going to ruin their life. And then there's the gameplay, which honestly, would you guys have guessed, there's really not much to talk about here. I mean, quite literally, every single game action is just press buttons just because. This is such a key jingling simulator. Make the character tap to a song just because. Float the character into some boxes just because. Do some skateboard tricks just because. The entire thing just feels like they put those elements into the game just so they could technically qualify this as a video game, likely because these guys wouldn't be able to cut it making a movie, which honestly makes a lot of sense when I look back on some of these positive reviews as, well, it does feel like we have a lot of wannabe film critics trying to review a...
To jakby wyszło, kurwa, jako film, to by dostało stare oceny 3/10 i tyle, nie? Ludzie by to zakopali w chuj i nikt by się tym nie przejmował.
Wannabe filmmaker's game. This game is literally just a soundtrack. Turn the music off, you just turn off the game entirely. There's nothing else to it. Now, before any of these critics hop in here and say, oh, well, you just don't get it. You don't understand what this game is trying to do. No, look, I understand the message that this game is trying to send, and I would never try to understate the importance of music here. Music can be a moment
Typ który w ogóle na kadrze od kilku lat ma gitarraka z kilkoma gitarami, w takiej styluwie, w jaką on teraz ma, no raczej wątpię, że miałby tego nie zrozumieć, nie? No chyba, że z totalnym pozerem.
Captured in time. You can remember easily when and where you heard a song, who recommended it to you, what life felt like in that moment when you were listening to it. And I had those exact same nostalgic connections with this game. When they played Sensitive to Light by Rainbow, I immediately got a flashback of the time my friend Mike had me listen to Ronnie James Dio for the first time, and how it became the only thing that we listened to for like an entire year. Hell, even the part where you sneak into the shutdown theme park reminded me of the time that my friends and I had snuck into our local zoo after hours with beer to be able to impress a group of girls. This game does remind you of things, but it doesn't do anything with that. The game doesn't try to build on that. It doesn't try to bring you any closure. It doesn't even try to say anything meaningful. It's just like, man, memories. Am I right? Man, wasn't it so much better back then? Everybody just misunderstood me. They didn't realize how special I was. They were so wrong. It's just millennial slop because my unfortunate generation has nothing of value to bring from the past other than just wishing that they were still living in it. I just do not understand how a game like this could be held in such high regard among some of the greatest games in history when it's not doing anything special other than spending a bunch of money on licensed music. Like, how do people not understand why players are upset right now? A game that is reminding you of your life is not the same thing as a
Stary, ale to nie byłoby dobrą grą, gdyby tu był soundtrack zrobiony przez deweloperów. Bo to, co ta gra robi, ona zapożycza wspomnienia i nostalgię z utworów, które licencjonowała.
game being well written. A song that's making you nostalgic is not the same thing as a game that is earning that emotion. That's the part that these reviewers seem to keep blending together in a lot of their reviews, and they let them give this game a perfect score. Look at every single one of these reviews. It's always the soundtrack that's being mentioned. It's the most notable thing about the game because it is the most notable thing about the game, because beyond that, there is just absolutely nothing. That's what players are complaining about right now. But instead of
pierdolę, nie, no, tym polskim grifterom to stary brakuje. I my nawet nie jesteśmy blisko, stary, tego, co się w USA dzieje, nie? Oni tam się z niczym nie pierdolą. Z niczym, kurwa, nie?
Responding to that, instead of meditating on that, the second that this game came under fire from players, it got AstroTurf faster than anything I've ever seen. I mean, we even have Xbox out here putting out a statement saying just because you're not personally into a game doesn't mean it's a bad game. Then you also have people that are saying Mixtape is coming under fire for not having gameplay, which just isn't true. So you guys are just flat out lying now, apparently. Then there's also the usual defenses that have been rolling through. It's not for you. If you don't like it, don't play it. And all of this is just ignoring why people are upset. Because the issue is not that some people like Mixtape. Like, fine, go ahead, like it, enjoy it, have your memories, cry to the soundtrack. I don't care. The issue is that this is not a great game or even a good game or even a game that I would consider being a video game. It's just not representative of the hobby. It doesn't belong next to the games that it has now been elevated to stand beside. It is stealing valor from indie games while also being funded by some of the richest people in the world. I mean, they're sending out custom CD players and headphones in their press kits, and somehow this is being treated like some humble little artistic miracle. That is what people are reacting to. They're watching an industry put Mixtape on a pedestal and say, this is what we need more of. This is the standard. This is the kind of game that deserves to be remembered. And the players are looking at it and saying, no, absolutely not. I think what bothers me the most about Mixtape, and this is probably true for a lot of other people, is that everybody can see what's going on. Okay? Like, we're not the crazy ones here. The math doesn't math. This just doesn't make any sense. This game is getting far more praise than it deserves. And the minute the players start talking about that, the minute they bring that up, all of a sudden everybody wants to start acting confused. Oh, we got another victim of the culture war here. No, that's not what this is. Stop doing that. This is a short, expensive...
Ale tu chyba w Mixtape'ie nie ma żadnych zarzutów o to, że nie jest jakiś woke, bo coś takiego. Całe zarzuty odnośnie Mixtape'a są odnośnie tego, że jest po prostu chujową grą i tyle. A jeśli chodzi o to, jakim jest filmem, to również jest chujowym. Curated
nostalgia product that's being paraded around like it's an indie darling that is... somehow now in the same conversation as some of the greatest games ever made, and it's been defended since the moment the game came out. But it's also just not that good. Like, not even close. People are sick and tired of being gaslit, of being told that something is important by people that already want games to be a lot less like games to begin with and a lot more like things that they're interested in. Politics, music, film, things that have nothing to do with games. This game represents that to them. That's exactly why this has become such a huge flashpoint in a lot of cases. You are placing this game in the same conversation, likely also in the conversation of Game of the Year, because of course they're going to try to do that, but you're putting it in the same conversation as some of the greatest games ever made. Zelda and Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm trying to think of all the 10 out of 10s in the industry. I'm sure there's probably a GTA in there and maybe a couple of other things as well. There's tons of games that have gotten 10s out of 10s, but they're like the pinnacle of the games industry. That's why none of this makes any sense to anybody. But, you know, I think it would be different if this was just a discussion based on taste, on personal taste. Like, oh, they just really like this game. But, like, these review scores mean something. Players recognize that. They know that these game scores still, sadly enough, hold weight in the games industry, shape conversations, and also shape the future of games themselves. And
Kolejny gamingowy fruster. Ej, jak to jest kurwa możliwe? Zobacz, że ludzie, którzy są zupełnie związani z tym, co ja mówię, z zagranicą mówią dokładnie to samo. Są dwie opcje. Albo są tak samo klejeni jak ja, albo faktycznie tutaj istnieje jakaś korelacja, jakiś konkretny schemat i można z tego wyciągnąć wnioski, do których dochodzi więcej osób, którzy są niezależnymi twórcami. Pewnie jedynka.
some cases. That's the reason why people are so upset. Players know what these scores mean. They know what they can end up doing. They know how this industry uses them. And they're being tired of being told not to notice when the praise for a game doesn't match the product. Something I just can't stand seeing right now is how quickly the media just wants to handwave player criticism and try to shove everything under the label of a culture war. They go out and they find the dumbest fringe posts from anti-woke Twitter accounts and they hold them up as if they're representative of everybody. And then they use that outrage to quiet.
Mi się wydaje, że w przypadku Mixtape'a to chyba bardzo widoczne też jest to, że w ostatnich 2-3 dniach po premierze ta gra dostaje bardzo duży media coverage i finalnie zwróćcie uwagę na to, że tam liczba sprzedaży wcale kurwa nie rośnie jakoś, no nie? Przy tym ile się gada o tej grze, jak ona jest budząca emocje z różnych stron, no tak finalnie się nie sprzedaje jakoś za mocno. To też jest w ogóle ciekawe z Mixtape'em, patrzę na to. 20% sprzedanych kopii Mixtape'a jest z Chin, stary? 10% z UK, 10% z Rosji? Coś, co ma trafiać jako amerykański sen nostalgiczny, jako hołd do lat 90. w Stanach Zjednoczonych, finalnie nie przemówiło do ludzi w Stanach Zjednoczonych? Może dlatego, że tam ludzie widzą, że to jest do końca kurwa nieautentyczne? Chuj wie, nie? No 69 tysięcy 69 kont na Steamie to ma 65 tysięcy sprzedanych kopii, no nie? Gra w najlepszym scenariuszu mogła na Steamie zarobić bańkę. A myślę, że więcej to kosztowała licencja na te kawałki.
And dismiss legitimate criticism. I just saw The Gamer post an article about how Mixtape is another victim of the culture war, but almost all of the criticism that I have seen has had nothing to do with race, gender, nationality, or anything that's even close to that. It's people talking about how they think the game looks lame, how it barely has any gameplay, how it's not for them, and how it doesn't deserve its score, and they don't want games like it to shape the future. That's the actual argument. That's the conversation that a lot of people are having right now, but I don't think that it's one that the media wants to engage with. So instead, they're trying to gaslight everybody instead of just talking about review scores and what they mean to players and the industry. For a long time, reviews were supposed to be able to help players find games and also understand what games were actually worth their time. But also, at the exact same time, it showed a level of quality that the games industry should be aiming for. They were supposed to be coming from people who loved games, understood games, and could explain why something stood out when something else fell short. They were a way of being able to measure a game against the medium itself. But lately, I feel like that understanding and that use is almost completely gone. I feel like every single month we have another game that comes out where the critics are celebrating one thing while the players are looking at it like everybody has lost their mind, or in some cases it ends up being vice versa. And now I realize, like, sure, some people are going to write that off as tribalism or groupthink or players just being mad that somebody else has a different opinion, but I think that that completely ignores why reviews mattered in the first place, because players know that review scores are not just random personal feelings. They've never been treated that way. They've always been treated with a level of authority. They affect sales, they affect perception, awards conversations, marketing, storefront visibility, reputations, the games that get remembered, how games get made. Hell, even in some cases, they also affect people's bonuses. So when people are out there and they're trying to downplay any of this backlash, saying, oh, well, it's just one person's opinion, I think that's what's really getting players pissed off, because that score is not presented like it's some diary entry. What are we talking about here? It's published from a major outlet. It's carrying the weight of that outlet. And when a major outlet gives a game a perfect score, they're not just saying, oh, I had a nice time. They're placing that game in the upper tier of the medium. They're telling the audience that this belongs among the best. They're telling the industry that this is the standard to meet. They are saying that there needs to be more games like this.
Dokładnie. To jest najważniejsze.
So let's actually follow that logic. If Mixtape is going to be one of the best reviewed games this year, if these critics are really going to put it up there in the upper echelon of the games industry, then what exactly do these guys want the industry to take from that? Because, I mean, you're giving it a 10, you're giving it 100%, you're saying this is one of the best games that have ever been made, so you want them to learn something from it, right? I mean, when Baldur's Gate 3 and Expedition 33 blew up, those games taught the industry a lesson. They showed that turn-based games are still very much alive, that players want quality and agency, and they want systems that are responding to them. They want better narratives. When Elden Ring did the exact same thing, there were a ton of lessons there too. You had scale and exploration, environmental storytelling, execution, a world that was trusting players to kind of figure things out on their own. But with Mixtape, what do you guys want the games industry to learn from it? Make more millennial nostalgia slop, throw in some MTV-esque music video transitions of people floating through hallways, maybe load the thing full of licensed music? How about don't even bother making a video game, just make an interactive movie where you just press the forward button? Oh, I know. Make games that critics like.
Śmieszne, że ta dziesiątka, ta IGN-a to już taka antyreklama, że pewnie lepiej by się sprzedało, gdy miał 7, no.
Because of course that worked out great for Marathon, Dragon Age The Veilguard, Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2, and a long list of other games that got praised, protected, defended by the media, and then came out and went absolutely nowhere with the actual audience. This is the problem. This is what people are really complaining about right now. This is why they're going after games like Mixtape, because they are trying
A jak to w Polsce broni Mixtape'a?
to save these games and these studios from making mistakes, because these critics are no longer representing the audience. And if this industry is going to continue to follow their taste, their scores, and their idea of what games should become, well, it's only going to lead these guys to failure. I think that right now, we're at a very real turning point in the gaming community, and it's crossing over everything. I think it's journalism, reviews, players, content creators, hell, even just the way that people are talking about games. You have one side of the conversation that really wants to treat games as high art first, and then you have this other side that still understands that games are a product that people need to buy. And I don't think that those two things have to be enemies. I think that games can be art. Obviously, they can be, but a lot of this conversation is being driven by pretentious writers who have fell into the games industry because they couldn't find their way into film, music, or politics. And now they're reviewing these games through those principles while completely replacing the audience's expectations, because they are not like the audience. They do not view games in the same way. Now, it's not like those principles don't matter. I appreciate the high art in games. I think it's absurdly cool that people can create here. The interactive worlds, the incredible soundtracks, the engaging stories, the places that you can actually live in for a while. And in my eyes, games are the pinnacle of art. They really are. They're the intersection of all forms of art. But for players, customers really, there's...
Stary, ale w grach najważniejsze jest to, czego nie mogły nigdy zrobić filmy i muzyka. Interaktywność, no nie? Za to ludzie pokochali gry komputerowe. I my coraz bardziej to usuwamy z gier komputerowych, bo dużo ludzi chce się nazywać graczami. Nie chce grać w gry, kurwa, dłuższe, nie chce grać w gry skomplikowane, nie chce grać w gry, które trzeba analizować, w które trzeba być zaangażowanym, nie chce grać w gry z odpowiednim sprzężeniem zwrotnym, tylko... Fajnie jest, kurwa, nie? Należeć do grona graczy, nie? Takie weź, to jest cool. Wiesz co chodzi, nie?
Still buying a product. And while they can appreciate the story, the music, the themes, the emotional intent, they are usually going to care more about the game part than they will the product, because that's usually what they're trying to spend their money on. That's the escapism. That's where a lot of the fun is in a lot of these games. It's what separates games from every other form of media. So when something like Mixtape costs $20, barely has any gameplay, and it's still getting treated like it needs to be with some of the best games in the entire industry, games, by the way, that a lot of these players really care about, of course these guys are going to recoil. Of course these guys are going to get mad. And it's only going to get worse when the defense turns into this smug little lecture about why you should like it, or how every single game is important, or why you're lesser for not liking it for whatever reason. Oh, you just don't get it, man. Man, you know what? When these experiences are about as deep as a puddle, no wonder these people end up liking a game like this. It's just a reflection of themselves in this case. I've also seen a lot of people that have been talking about how, oh, the usual weirdos are mad about this, or I hate that every single game is a culture war right now. And I hate this dismissive language, this trying to play it safe, this trying to essentially turn everything into a fucking hug box because everybody wants everyone to agree with everything or just leave everybody alone if they don't like something. And honestly, You know what? I do think that there is a culture war that's happening in games right now. Just not the one that I think a lot of these people believe is happening. The real fight is between the industry and the audience. It's around pricing, it's around ownership, it's around direction, it's around whether or not these games are still being made for the people that play them or for people who seem almost embarrassed of them as video games in the first place. That's why the reaction to Mixtape has gotten so hot. It's players not just rejecting one game, they're rejecting what this game represents to them. The idea that games should be less interactive, less player-driven, less fun, and somehow become more respectable because they're going to borrow from film, music, politics, or whatever else. It's not just, I don't like this game. It's, I don't like
Prawda,
where you
kiedyś by się mówiło, że takie gierki są skierowane do kobiet. Tymczasem laski dziś ogrywają Eldena na macie do tańczenia, no.
guys keep trying to take games. And these guys aren't putting up with it anymore. I'm just sick and tired of the players not being able to have the conversations that they're trying to have, and a lot of this stuff ends up being relegated to content creators more than anything else because they just kind of get shut down on social media. Yeah, they get likes and updates and stuff like that, but there's really not a lot of movement from a lot of that stuff, and a lot of their concerns aren't really voiced. You know, players are not hating on small games. They're not trying to take down these indie games. This isn't a culture war over identity politics. I'm not going to pretend like that stuff doesn't exist or those conversations don't happen. They definitely do, but what this is more or less, it's just people that are sick and tired of people that are speaking on their behalf that do not represent them in the slightest. That's what a lot of this is about. People are rejecting Mixtape not as a game, but as a symbol that the score around it creates. That's probably the better way for me to be able to put this. Something this highly rated is going to give a green flag or a green light to a bunch of different publishers and developers that something like this might be a good idea. I mean,
Kurwa, to jest kolejny film nagrany, żeby Kiszak go obejrzył i pochwalił,
the
nie?
critics really liked it, right? And a lot of players just don't want to have anything to do with that. They're trying to send the message right now that this is something that critics like and that we don't want to have anything to do with. So they're frying this game. They're roasting it the best they possibly can. And they're doing a great job at doing it, by the way. This should have been a movie. Or maybe they need to make some type of other secondary category that's not inside of video games, because this is definitely not a video game. This is definitely not a part of that conversation. It's definitely not a movie either. It's existing in this weird limbo area. But the problem is that when it's dragged into this conversation, I'm going to be real with you. I actually think it's unfair for these I think it's unfair for these game reviewers to have actually reviewed a game like this, because of course this is the kind of treatment that it's going to get. I don't think it belongs here. And I think by dragging it into
Myślisz, że
this
stary po chuja na 3 tygodnie do Stanów leciałem. Stary, tam ziarno grifterskie zostało zasiane, nie?
conversation, you're making them look bad. You're ruining their own reputation. You're ruining their chances for their next game that they put out. And I don't think that's fair to them. I don't think it's fair to the audience. I don't think it's fair to anybody, to be honest with you.
Byliśmy tam na
All I'm going to say is that I
siebie,
think it's
no.
very telling that we have a bunch of journalists that really resonated with a bunch of teenagers that felt that they are misunderstood and that everybody else is wrong. That secretly they're special. Not everybody else has figured it out yet. And maybe they will in the future.
Czy obejrzeć materiał, ktoś to chwali tą gierkę? Ciekawe, jakie są argumenty. W chuj jestem ciekawy, jak jest jakiś materiał, który chwali tą gierkę i pozwolicie mi... Chociaż ja nagrałem felieton o tej grze, to chyba mi się resetuje, nie? I mogę. No nie, obejrzałbym jakiś materiał, który chwali tą grę i zobaczył, czy tam są jakieś konkretne argumenty, nie?
Really tells a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. I'm super tired. It's really late right now. I've been up late lately. Anyway, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
No. No, dziękuję. Nie, czekam na jakiś felieton, nie? Dobra, odpalamy kurwa gotika, nie ma czasu do stracenia, nie, stary?